Hi there, good afternoon. I'm Ollie Mann from the Media Podcast. This is Matt Miller, the CEO of Telebug, and this is Nikolai Wirtz from Nordisk Film and TV, excuse me. I've been polishing up my Danish accent, but I fail. We're talking about apps in this session, so it's one of the rare ones where you can be second screening the whole time and you're like on message. That's fine. But ironically, we're not taking questions through the app on this session. So there will be a few minutes at the end for questions. So obviously, if there's anything you want to ask the guys, then think about what you'd like to ask. We're basically talking about one show in particular today, which is called All Against One, which Nikolai, I'm sure, will explain has taken Denmark by storm. But Nikolai, tell us a bit about what you do, first of all.
Well, I'm an executive producer with the Nordisk Film TV in Copenhagen. So I basically develops and produces the shows that we come up with and some formats that we have we're part of the Zodiac Banijay group, so that's what I do.
And Matt, essentially Telebug make apps for TV shows.
Yeah, we make apps for TV show, we made the app for All Against One.
Right. And Nikolai, I noticed the show's title is in English. I presume you're open to discussions about international distribution.
Yeah, exactly. You're guessing quite right there. Yeah.
Okay, so we get the idea from that. It's a very, very simple idea. It's basically the thing about playing along at home, which everyone historically has done with game shows. Now you can do it with an app simultaneous to the live broadcast.
Yeah, because the thing is, everybody has been doing this for years, sitting, watching entertainment, watching quiz shows, and being a lot smarter than the guy in the studio. So here you get to test it because you can play along. It's the average of the nation's answer against that one person. It's based on the wisdom of crowds, but in essence, that's what it is.
Okay, now the VT boasted historic download and engagement rates.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about actual numbers?
I brought you two numbers because I think in a festival like this, you've seen a lot of slides with numbers. This might be the last one you'll see. It only has two numbers on it. The average share of the show in the 3+ demographic, 44% over the 7 shows we did in the spring. So, and it's hard to compare ratings across nations. You might think this has been aired in North Korea, but it has been aired in Denmark in a marketplace that looks a little bit like the British on DR1, which is the equivalent of BBC One. So 44% is a huge number for us, and I think it would be in most markets. And then there's another very interesting number I brought as well. And it has a lot to do with our corporation, Matt. It's 13%. 13% of viewers actually played along in the app on average. Up almost 15% in the last episode. And they were on right from the start. Right from show one, we were the number one app in App Store, in Google Play, and we could see in the back end of the software from question one in show one, we had huge engagement rates. And I think that's really what's interesting to discuss today, because that's where we think we've broken a code in some way.
Yeah, and I think with the engagement rates we saw right from the very start, the first question, it just kept going up. So question 2 was bigger than question 1, and that continued throughout the first episode. And then the second episode started at the high point of episode 1, and it just kept going up right the way through.
Because that's, I think, a danger that a lot of people fall into when they're developing game shows in this country, where perhaps the app is more of an add-on than conceived from the beginning like this one, is they think, well, you mention it at the top of the show as a call to action, and then if people don't do it right from the beginning, they're not going to join in the play halfway through. But that's not true.
No, we were very careful when we designed the app to make sure that you could join in halfway through and you weren't penalised for that. So, if you see it and it works well, as the better the show gets, the more people you want to get joining in. So you don't want to penalise anybody because they were a bit slow off the mark at the start.
But to be clear, you actually can't win the prize. We saw someone calling up and winning a prize because they've been playing the app. Presumably, you can't win the prize unless you've been playing from the beginning.
No, you can.
You still can?
Yeah. The winner... there's two outcomes. If the contestant in the studio wins, he gets the prize. If all wins, we'd randomly draw a winner from everybody who has been playing. So even if you just played the last question, you still got a chance. So there's a reason to join in at every point of the show. There's 7 questions in each show. So if you drop in halfway, you still have a chance to win.
Okay, let's talk about the kind of questions that you do on the show then, because we saw some stunts basically.
Yeah.
You know, here's a rather large woman. What happens when she dives into this ball pond? Why? Why is it that kind of question?
Yeah, the thing is, I think if you ever try to develop something, you know, it has a lot of iterations down the road. We started out seeing a Norwegian show with Norway playing against a guy in chess. So the nation tried to beat a guy in chess. It was a one-off in Norway. It took 3 hours, and eventually the chess master won. The bit we got from that was the interactivity part, and we thought, okay, chess is not a very good game. It's hard to explain, and it takes a long time to play. What is the easiest game we can come up with? And it shouldn't be trivia questions, because there's always somebody in the room who has a little more experience, education, something like that, who has the upper hand in trivia questions. So it should be something that everybody had a fair chance of guessing on, and you shouldn't be able to Google it. And when we figured out you mustn't be able to Google the right answer, we come up with the right solution for the games, but it was incredibly hard to come up with 49 ungoogleable games. But it was, if you drop a chicken from the supermarket into a tank of 2,000 piranhas, how many seconds will it take for the piranhas to consume the chicken? Or if you take a caravan, hoist it up 50 meters in the air and drop it, what will be the top speed before hitting ground? So it's all physical, sort of a little bit Mythbusters-like questions, where if you're 8-year-old, you can have a fair guess, and if you're 80 years old, you can have a fair guess.
And how many piranhas did it take to eat the chicken?
Yeah, there were 2,000 piranhas. They spent 5 minutes. The thing about piranhas you might want to know is really...
Remember this when it comes to the UK. It's got the answer.
No, they're scared. They're scared. They only eat dead meat. So if something, and they take a lot of time just to figure out, is it dead or is it alive? So they took 5 minutes to eat the chicken, and the audience got it wrong. They thought it would be like, you know, Donald Duck style, 2 seconds.
So from an app point of view then, Matt, the point about this is that actually every question is the same format, and they all involve you sliding a finger across a screen. That's, again, very, very simple, but you see why that works best on an app.
No, I think when you're thinking about an app for a show, you don't want the show to have to explain what's going on in the app or make it complicated. You want it to be very simple for them to explain, and you want people to be able to get it and understand and not really have to think. You want them to be able to relax and enjoy the show without being stressed out about the app. You know, and the other thing that we think about quite a lot is making sure that it's really clear when you should use the app, when you're actually going to be looking at the phone and what's going on there, and when there shouldn't be anything going on. You should put the phone down. You should watch the TV. So I think getting that balance right of going, no, we want you to put the phone down and not use the phone now, and make it really clear that you pick up the phone and you're not worried about what you're going to have to do or whether you do it right. Make it really, really simple. That makes it accessible and appeal to a really broad audience.
And so does that go both ways? So when you're making the TV format in the studio, you're thinking, actually, we don't want this bit when people are supposed to be playing at home. We don't want that to be too engaging. We want people to be looking at their screen.
Exactly. I think we are very specific, and I think that's a point you could sort of take on and go on using in other shows of this kind. We're very specific where we want people's attention directed. So when we want them to watch telly, nothing is going on in the app. When we want them to use the app has sound effects and graphical effects, and not very much is going on the TV. And then I think there's one of the things about the app. We developed it, or Matt and his team developed it in a very short amount of time. We were on a very stressful deadlines with the show to get all the technical stuff right. And in this case, it was actually helpful for us, because we scrapped a lot of ideas. We thought we should have a lot more statistics. We thought we should have a different kind of inputs, not just the slider, but there's all sorts of different things. And in the end, we scrapped it and kept it very simple. And I think it's one of the beauties with this app that the threshold for joining in the game, registering and just starting to play is very low. And we got... On the first show we did, it was the nation that won, and we draw a winner. It was a 63-year-old lady, and she was extremely happy to win the money, of course. And what she told us was, And this was the first app I ever downloaded, and now I'm winning money. So
She said that on the TV?
She said that on TV.
It's like
yeah,
the best
and I
possible
think
contestant you could have had.
she'll possibly be a little bit disappointed with the other apps. but
She's on Tinder now.
Yeah. But the thing is, we kept it very simple. Not with the rules of chess or with a lot of different inputs. A very simple numeric game. Try and guess this sort of crazy random number.
And actually, Matt, I mean, that's an interesting point, isn't it? And you both seem to be sort of singing off the same hymn sheet. And it's interesting, I guess, for a lot of people in Silicon Roundabout that Nikolai's company came to Britain to find an app developer. What is it, do you think, that a lot of TV developers internationally actually don't understand about apps that they need to get you to help them?
I think there's a feeling that sort of apps are complicated, and there is a lot of complicated technology that goes into these things. And I think the real skill is being able to, hide that and not have to worry about it. That lets you focus on keeping it simple. It's easy to say keep it simple. It is actually very, very hard to keep the thing simple. It's a lot easier because it's a lot easier to think, oh, we'll add that feature because that will make it better. It feels much riskier to take features away to make it better. So to do less to make it better, I think is very hard. And I think we're very lucky in the UK. In the UK, it's very advanced. There are lots of apps, and we've been able to see what works and what doesn't work. And I think that's a huge advantage for us in being able to try things out in a really big market. So with lots of things, and really learn what does work and what doesn't work. And we've worked with the BBC, we've worked with ITV, so we've got experience both of commercial broadcasters and non-commercial broadcasters and what works. And so I think that's we're unusual in that we've got that flexibility in being able to do that.
But I mean, this would have been a very public failure if the TV had said on the show, right, everyone, download the app now, and then it crashed.
Yeah.
That's quite scary, isn't it? You say you could test it, but you could test it on your previous experiences, not on what happens when however million people all try and download it at the same time.
Yeah, but brown trousers are fairly important on these shows. So you have to plan what happens if it goes wrong, and you have to make sure that you've tested so that you understand that it is going to work. So it is scary.
But the thing is, we knew that from the very beginning that this was an experiment in more than one way. And that the piranha and dropping Kara and stuff would be the easy part of it, because the back end of this is what was hard. So it took three things. It took an app developer with a lot of experience, because 14 weeks is not very much to build a fully fledged app and get it through App Store for a premiere. And then it took a broadcaster who really went out on a limb, who saw very early that this idea could fly, and trusted Tellibug to deliver the app and us to deliver the show, and up to the last moment said, okay, we're really going with this, and if it fails, so be it, but we think it won't. We think you're the right guys to do this, and luckily they were right so far.
Yeah. If it fails, so be it, is something that a lot of programme makers wish more commissioners thought more of the time. Let's talk about what could have gone wrong then, or actually, to put a more positive spin on it, how you made sure it went right. So for those who are geeking out on this stuff, technologically, how are you running an app simultaneously to broadcasting a show that presumably is on cable and satellite and can be streamed and everything else? How do you overcome those obstacles? Because not everyone's watching it at exactly the same time, presumably.
It's actually pretty lo-fi, because the guy who's producing the content of the app is sitting in the studio, controlling the gallery, along with the producers of the show. But he has a cable TV feed, which mirrors exactly with the delay that the viewers at home, or most of the viewers at home, the ones watching it on the biggest cable providers in Denmark, will be watching. So he watches it in the viewers' real time, and triggers the app's questions and effects according to that signal. So the timing was very good for, I'd say, what would you say, Matt, 75-80% of viewers, and then if you were on satellite or something like that, you could get a slightly longer delay. The ones we really couldn't help was the ones streaming it.
Yeah. Why? Because there's a delay on streaming that's too long.
Yeah, it is. I mean, when you get people who are kind of internet streaming, you end up with they're actually, when they're seeing it's maybe a minute behind what's going on. And, with something like this, the responses they're doing are going into the studio, and you can't just have the studio padding time, waiting for the people who are really slow in the audience to catch up. So the show has to move at a pace, and it has to move at a pace that makes sense for the show. And you also need to give the viewers time to pick up their phone, remember their unlock code, and get the stuff. And so you don't want to pressure them too much, but you do need to keep the show moving.
But in a way, it makes a nice viewing experience, because it's almost the same as a football match or something like that. You want to see it real time. You don't want to wait and stream it later. You want to play along as it is performed out live. So it's good for having an engagement with the audience.
Yeah, and is it an app that you can play when the show has finished, or is it entirely dependent on watching the live stunt? What do you do for people that come to the app now, today?
We tell them when the next show's on.
So,
and have a lot of great content from the shows, clips and stuff. But it basically it's an app for during the show.
No,
just like the X Factor app.
It's very much. It's the goal of this is to get people watching the show at the broadcast time. I mean, it plays to what a broadcaster is really good at, which is getting people to tune in on that linear schedule right now and make sure that you don't miss it.
Yeah, I mean that's really interesting, because I interviewed Ido Rosenblum recently from Keshet, and he's created in Israel a show called Touch, which uses similar principles in the sense they've created a game that really works best on a second screen. It's sort of spot the difference, basically. 2 photos and you circle what's different about it. And you play simultaneously whilst the show's on. But those tasks are still there when the show finishes. And he was boasting to me, saying, look, we've had great engagement, loads of people downloading the app. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, but then they're not watching the telly. If I'm the broadcaster, great, you've created an app for yourself, a brand for yourself. But that's not what ITV would want you to do.
No, I think when you look at the stats and look at the number of people that are playing on, is one of the things that we think about is you don't actually want every single person watching playing along, right? Because then that means you've just built a great mobile game, because everybody's playing that. And then actually it'd be easier to build that just as a mobile game and not have to worry about producing a TV show. So you need to get a mix of a TV that works for the people that are choosing not to play along, but gets better when people choose to play along. And the show gets better when people are playing along. I think that's what's special about this, is the show's telling you something about what the audience are doing right now. So even if you're not doing, you're learning about the audience.
Yeah, and you can influence that. But I think one takeout creatively that we've had from this, and I think perhaps could inspire those of you who want to do something like this, is that if you look at interactive TV, there's been the first generation was a vote, basically SMS voting. You could get to be some way of a judge. And the voting apps was sort of glorified or graphically enhanced SMS voting in a way. And then there's been a wave of formats. I know in Belgium and in Denmark, Versus has been on, which is a pre-recorded show with an app on the side, so you can play on the games in the show, but you can't affect the outcome of the show. And then I think All Against One might be the first of a third generation of shows that's entirely dependent on the viewers playing along, where the viewers can influence the outcome of the show. And essentially, when you're playing on the All Against One app, you're playing exactly as if you were the contestant in the studio. You're given the same interface and the same time, the same questions as the contestant in the studio, so you can match up one-to-one. How would I perform if I were the one in the studio? And I think we'll see more shows putting the viewers in the place of the contestants.
Yeah, I think that, if you can let people at home do exactly what they're seeing the person on the TV do, that solves a lot of the problems of how do you explain it to them? Well, they just watch. Right? Just watch your question and go, oh, I could do that. Get the app, and oh yeah, I actually can do that. You don't have to labour an explanation of how do you download this. You just show them, and I think that's what TV is fantastic at, is showing people what they need to do.
And you've elegantly sort of swerved the advertising question because you're on a publicly funded channel in Denmark, which is similar to the BBC.
The BBC, yeah.
And you can see how this would work on the BBC. But if I'm Channel 5 or I'm Sky and I'm thinking, okay, this is a great format and I'd like to buy it, I suppose the question for Matt really, is it a premium viewer who's got a second screen open the whole time and then when the commercials are on is looking at the app because you can advertise at them? Or actually is that worse because they're not watching the ads that people have paid to be displayed at that time when they're watching a live show they're engaged with?
I think it comes down to, again, it's not all of the audience are going to be on the app. So those sort of TV ad spots stand for the audience, in this case, 87% are going to be watching those. But we've got 13% that are getting great experience interacting with things, and you can get premium value from advertisers in the app.
So you would advertise at them during the commercial breaks?
That's exactly what we do with X Factor on ITV in the UK. Yeah.
So they get a special app just for them as users, a special ad as users of the app?
Yep, that's exactly what we do.
Okay, we have 4 minutes left, so we're going to take questions, as I say, ironically, not in the app. Does anyone have a question for Nikolai about how the show works, or for Matt about how apps can work generally in TV? Don't be frightened, yes. We're just going to bring a mic to you so that listeners on YouTube can hear. Yeah.
Is there any other television shows that this kind of app can be applied to, not just a game show, like sports or drama even?
So we
reality show.
So we do apps for X Factor, Got Talent, Voice, I'm a Celebrity, Love Island. So I think the formatted entertainment works well for apps because it's formatted, and so you know what the structure is going to be. And whilst the things may change from time to time, that fits really well. So I think the formatted entertainment. I think I think there's some creativity needed in terms of rethinking what you can do. And that's what this show did. It really came up with some, a new idea that hadn't been done before that took advantage of that. But it is, I think there's a lot of scope for doing things and a lot of scope for creating new formats that have not been done before in this, rather than just trying to reinvent phoning in voting for shows by putting some glossy graphics.
I mean, are there some shows that shouldn't have apps, where actually commissioners are wasting their time trying to add that dimension to it? I know you're turning away business by answering that, but
I would the example I think many dramas would be made an awful lot worse by an app because you just end up with something that distracts you from the drama that's going on.
I would have loved to have renamed the dog in Downton Abbey, though, wouldn't you? If you could influence that would be great. Anyone else? Any other questions? Last chance. Hands in the air. One further question, and then we'll wrap up. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a question you can answer, but in terms of the game show, in terms of the cost base, what was the lead time and how much did it cost to develop the app? I know it might be difficult, but...
Well, you've already said the lead time is about 14 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think we can answer the cost question.
No.
Well, but maybe what you could answer is, as a percentage of the total budget, how much of the channel, DR1, how much were they putting into app development rather than program development, if you would separate them up?
Yeah, but I'll have to sort of slide off a little bit on that one because the economy behind the app involves some investment from different partners. So yeah, it's a little hard to give a hard number about that.
Okay, I think that's a no. But I'm sure he's open to more frank conversations if you'd like to buy his show.
And being an entertainment guy from Denmark, it's very nice to be here because it's always the drama guys with Borgen and that gets invited to the festivals. So I'm very happy to be here.
No one dies in your show.
No.
And apart from a chicken.
Yeah.
Okay, Nikolai Wurz, thank you very much. And Matt Miller, thank you very much. I've been Ollie Mann, thank you.